Welcome to Hire, Lead, and Chill.
Hey everybody, Shawn Day here with Hire, Lead, and Chill. It is not 4 o'clock, so don't freak out. So probably nobody will be watching this because we probably didn't promote it at 3 p.m. very much, but we usually get a handful, and then we get maybe 500 to 1,000 that watch it over the next couple of days. So hopefully if you're watching live or in the next couple of days, you get a little bit of happiness out about what we're going to be talking about today. I hope you get a lot of happiness. Before I bring in my guest, Richard Clarke, let me just touch on a couple things with the labor market, what's going on with recruiting in our space, and go from there. So the labor market is starting to loosen up a little bit. We're seeing some more application flow. We're seeing some easier sourcing leads and things like that. So that's all good. What happens is it sort of shifts with the supply and demand, and when the labor market starts to loosen up. And I've always said if it can get around to that, get back to that 4% range or so, usually that's where there's a lot of gravy in the labor market, where we're not overburdened with some things and we're not short staffed like we used to be. Although we still do see a little bit of issues with being short staffed. We talk a lot about that, and we try to train on how to avoid being short-staffed, which is all about basically being proactive. But that's another time, another day, and I'll toss a video up there about that. One of the things that we've been dealing with over the last couple of years is how do I get more application flow? How no shows up to the interview and all those sort of things. So that's starting to switch a little, but what happens now as a small business owner with 5, 10, 15, 25 employees or more, somewhere in there, you've got a lot of other things going on. So as those applications start to go up like this and bigger and bigger and bigger, what are you doing to screen through that now? That starts to become the dilemma now, where a little bit, if you're not proactive, if you don't have a recruiting system in place, if you don't have great leadership, great culture, and we're going to talk about that culture thing a lot today with being happy at work and enjoying work maybe a little bit more with Richard here in about a minute. But you really have to have those things in place, and speed is everything too, the way things are today with technology and AI and automations and all those sort of things. We've got a screening system and a scoring system for technicians, salespeople, office admin, general managers, you name it, we've got it for our industry and home service space. And so if you have any questions about that or you want anything, just to chat with me, go to hireleadchill.com, hireleadchill.com. All right, enough of that boring stuff. Let's bring in our guest, Richard Clarke. How are you doing, Richard?
Good morning, good afternoon. Good afternoon, where you are.
Where are you at?
I am in the Canary Islands.
That's
for those that don't know where they're Spanish islands, about 2,000 miles south of Spain, just off the coast of Africa.
Yeah. And how did you end up there? Born, raised, or?
No. I was born in Britain, schooled in Britain, traveled the world, went back to Britain to live, and it rained a lot. So I went to find somewhere warm and I didn't leave. Yeah, that's basically it.
Beautiful. Tell everybody who you are and what's going on. Let's start there, and then we'll dive into happiness and some other things.
So my name's Richard Clarke. I started a IT outsourcing company about 10 years ago called Secret Source. I handed over the reins of CEO a couple of years ago, and now I teach companies how to make their teams happier.
How to make their teams happier. I love that.
Yeah.
So are you, is your client base primarily IT, or is it diversified a little bit past that?
No, it's diversified. Yeah, I work with a few schools, work with charities. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I want to talk about is, can you give us a general definition of what you mean by happiness? I look at we can mix in, and it is a goofy question, right? So we mix in so many things into the batter of the happiness. You've got peace, you've got joy, you've got short term, you got long term, you've got is there how do you systemize that if we're talking about business stuff? Give us just a flavor of maybe. Let's start with how you got involved with this happiness thing. And
Okay.
then I think it's something everybody strives for. One way or another. I don't know if it's completely attainable or if it switches and changes, but there's probably some principles to it. Why don't you take all that garbage I just spewed out and make some sense of it?
All right, so there's about 10 questions in there. Let me
Yep.
see if I can remember all of them. Okay, so firstly, why am I interested in it? It's a long story. When I was about 15, 16 at school, I had no idea what I wanted to do as a career. And so one of my career advisors said, yeah, just because in Britain, you have to choose what subjects you do. And when you're 17 and 18, and that usually defines what you do at university and then what your job. So I said, I have no idea what I want to do as a career. And he said, just do something that makes you happy. Do something you like. And from that point on, I just fixated on that. So while everyone else was fixed on their career, I was fixed on being happy. So first, my own happiness. So I went to university, did something I liked, then went traveling for many years and ended up in the Canary Islands just because it was sunny. And then about 10 years ago, when I started my company, I had this theory that if I could make a happy company, right, then everything else would just work. Because I figured that if you make your employees happy, then they'd do better, they'd perform better, they'd collaborate, etc., etc. And yeah, so that's my story.
Your story, and you're sticking to it.
I am sticking to it. Yeah. So then, next question was, what's happiness? Right, that's quite a tricky one, quite a deep one. Probably a few books written on that. The way I see it, because I can summarize in less than a minute, is there are two types of happiness. There's your short-term happiness, like this meal makes me happy, this walk in the forest makes me happy, this watching my football team win, that makes me happy, that type of thing. And then there's the sort of underlying happiness, that how you're feeling in the morning. And yeah, it's just a combination of the two. And what I do is I try to teach companies how to improve the underlying happiness in their teams, and then how to give them the little peaks during the day.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that's great. There's so many different aspects of it with, and there's probably a science behind it, I'm sure. There is, I'm really big on ego and perception and some of those outlining things that relate to happiness. I think perception is a key ingredient for happiness. As I go out and I'm leaving for San Diego tomorrow, actually, to go present at a Christmas Light Association convention, of all things.
Okay.
You want to talk about happy? That's a happy place. And so every time I go out and I present, normally I'm invited to present and talk about recruiting. And the first 15 or 20 minutes of that presentation has to do with ego and perception. And we get all these things from, oh, I hate recruiting employees, what a pain. And you get that sort of side of it. And, I always look at it like this to make it an easy explanation. And that is, if it's pouring rain right now and I am in the rain and I am complaining. It's raining. I'm shoveling. I've got a shovel in my hand and it's mud, not just dirt. It's getting heavier. And I decide to step away and I look over to the left and I hear this giggling and there's two little kids in their diapers roaming around in a mud puddle in the rain, laughing and giggling. And I all of a sudden just start smiling and something happens. The rain has not changed. It's still the same rain that was pouring on me. In fact, I could probably be put on a lie detector test and pass when I tell you that this rain sucks. And then I would pass when I say this rain is great, how lovely this is. That's the easiest story I can tell on perception. Do you do any type of training with that, or is that something you disassociate? Not that it isn't an important aspect of happiness, maybe, but do you deal with perception or not with your teachings and consulting?
So the way I see it is ultimately you're responsible for your own happiness. Yeah. If you're unhappy in a job, however hard if you're an unhappy person and however hard you don't like your job and however hard your employee tries, it's your responsibility to go and find a job that you like. Okay. So ultimately, you're responsible for your own happiness. However, and this is what I teach, and I teach companies, they have to create the environment where their employees have the biggest chance of being happy, right? You can't guarantee that they'll be happy because they might just not like the job, right? Or they might just not like the 2-hour commute. But they can do their best to make, the way I like to think about it. So you got a gardener. He can plant 6 seeds, right? He can't guarantee that all those 6 seeds will grow, but what they can do is they can maximize the chances of it. So they can water it, they can feed it, they can provide the sunlight. And that's the job of, that's what I teach companies, how to create the environment where you maximize the chances of someone being happy at work.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And happiness, I love the topic. I really do. Mm-hmm. Happiness is, I guess happiness is something that's a theory until challenged, right? Okay. And so what I mean by that is it's real easy to be happy when there's unicorns and popcorn and the sun's out and all those sort of things, and money's good, and you know you got a day off and all those sort of things. It's when crappy things happen though, and maybe kind of unfair things happen. That's sort of when it becomes not just a theory, but a practical thing in life. Are you happy or aren't you? Can you pile on top of that, or am I way off on that?
Okay, so everyone has their underlying level of happiness, right? So you might be looking at you, I think you're an 8 out of 10. You're an 8 out of 10 guy.
8 out of
10. You're pretty high. But people are 6, 7, you know what I mean? And you can actually, you have a base level. If you get a load of money, you'll go up a bit, and then you'll drop back down to your base level pretty quickly. But you can increase your base level from a 6 to a 7 by practicing certain things. As you said before, seeing those children laughing, you're being grateful for things around you. That can increase your personal happiness. And you're talking about you probably think there's a science of happiness. There very much is a science of happiness. Yeah, you can study it at Yale, you can study it at Harvard. It's really interesting. It's a really booming topic. I went to the World Happiness Summit about a month ago.
Love it.
In the UK. It was the UK this year, and they had professors your UN US Surgeon General was there as well talking. And there's very much a science in it, and you can influence your own happiness by certain practices, and you can make people happier at work. You can actually do it. You can make people happier. It's not just yeah.
Beautiful.
And it's not all about free yoga classes, big salary increases. They obviously help, but it's not just about the what they call is the 3 Ps: pizzas, pay, and perks. That's not what will make you happy at work. Yeah.
Let's dive into that here in a second. I think it was Einstein that said something. I have a hard enough time understanding that type of brain, let alone trying to quote exactly what somebody like Einstein would say. But I think he was the one that said something like, "You've really got one really important choice in life, and that is to decide whether the world is evil or good."
Okay.
And I thought that was really interesting. And I think I've thought a lot about that. And when we, I hate diving into it, but like you get your political stuff, you get the bad things that are going on around the world, the news, the this, the that. And I always, I look back and I go, wait a minute, man, if I read some history right, I remember a duel between some guy named Burr that didn't like his political opponent, and they took 10 paces, turned around, and then shot him. So I don't know that politics has gotten worse, because I haven't seen another politician shoot another one in Congress or anything like that. If you read anything about John Adams and Jefferson, best of friends forever, and then all of a sudden, they were rivals in the new. So things are just 24/7 now, and I think that's probably the main difference on that. But I want to. That's not a fun, happy topic. So let's do this. Let's dig into sort of what, we think these things that drive us and at work and stick in the business world, we think these things, compensation. I think studies have been around long enough that most business owners and leaders realize that compensation isn't the number one factor.
Yeah.
I think that is out there, and there's so many studies on that, but there's some other things that drive happiness and well-being.
Yeah.
What are some things that do, and you probably have studied this or have studies on this?
Yeah. So there are lots of studies on this. So first thing, I want to challenge you on the compensation, on the pay thing.
Okay.
So yes, if you can't afford to pay your bills or you're struggling every month, if compensation, your salary is very important, possibly the most important, right? So people forget that. And then however, once you reach a certain level, now in the US, correct me if I'm wrong, I can't remember what it is. I'm not going to quote it now. Once you reach a certain level, then other things become more important, right? So there are other things that your companies can do that will make you happier than giving you a pay increase. Okay. Now, pay increases will always make you a little bit more happier, however much you get. That the recent studies have shown that. However, other things have become much more important. So people shouldn't think the way to make my team happy is just to pay them a bigger salary. They should do other things first once they're paying fairly. And so what does make people happy, right? There are thousands of things that make you happy at work, whether you're trusted, whether you have flexibility, et cetera, and it depends on which expert you speak to about how you categorize them. But I'm going to go with the US Surgeon General because you're in the US and he's a clever guy. He's put it into 5 areas, okay? 5 areas. So the first thing is safety, right? You need to feel safe at work. And that means you're not going to get hurt, you're not going to get bullied, and you have something called psychological safety, which means that you feel safe to speak your mind, to ask questions, and to challenge other people, all without being criticized. Okay, that is like compensation, like salaries. It's actually, if you don't have safety, it's a negative. It causes you unhappiness, right? So before you become happy, you need to feel safe. So that's the most important thing. That takes you to sort of neutral. And then after that, you need to feel a part of a community, right? You need to feel you belong. It's actually the biggest driver of happiness. So if you feel you belong to a company, you'll feel happy. And it's more, that drives happiness more than anything else, the feeling of belonging. So you've got community, and then you also feel supported. Then you've got autonomy. So you feel that you have some control of the way you work, right? So you have some control of where you work, when you work, and how you work. Like people trust you to do stuff. That will give you an immense amount of happiness. Then you've got that's 3. And then the 4th one is opportunities for growth. You need to feel that you're going to learn something at work and you've got some kind of career there. And then the final one is purpose. You need to understand why you're doing your work and that it actually matters. This is really important. You need to feel that your work's going to make some difference, even if it's a tiny difference, and that you're recognized for it, that you're not just doing it. They congratulate you for it. And those are your 5 core areas. Now, in between though, inside though, there's hundreds of little things.
Sure.
Those are your 5 main areas.
Okay. Yeah. What is a way that a company or a manager of people or a leader can provide a sense of purpose at a factory or even I'm in the home service industry, so we've got window clean people that go out and install, repair, and clean and manicure things. Yeah. What is it that we can do to give them some sort of sense of purpose, that this isn't a mundane job, this is an exciting job, and you should love to clean toilets and dust and vacuum, or cut lawns and things like that?
So look, it might be a mundane job, right? So I'll just give you a little story of one of our teams. My company, we build software for companies, and one of our teams was feeling a little bit disheartened. They said they weren't appreciated for their work, and they didn't know why they were doing it. So our client had the clever idea of, he went and interviewed their clients, right, and said, why they love their software. And then he surprised our development team and played them back videos of the client saying, we love this software because X, Y, Z. We love this because thank you for doing this. And it made a massive difference to them just to understand that their work was being used by other people and people were grateful for it. So your garden cleaners, your window fixers, a couple of thank you from their teams. Oh, this has made a massive difference to me because now there's no draft in my bedroom and my baby can sleep.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
There's so in the recruiting game for us with the home service space, we've got, I don't do it enough, and I try to remind my team that we change the world in our own little space. We really do change the world. And they look at me, what are you talking about? And I say, well, not only have we found thousands of jobs and paychecks for people, but for our clients, the number one creator or generator of stress is employee problems. Whether they're not showing up, you're short-staffed, your employees are upset because they're short-staffed and they're working their tails off, and they're and now you're cutting corners, so your quality I always say, if I lose 3 clients, I don't like it, but I'm still going to dinner and I'm paying my mortgage and I don't really lose a lot of sleep. I'll replace them. If I lose 3 employees in one day, I'm staring at the ceiling a little bit sometimes. So maybe, just maybe, we help marriages. Maybe, just maybe, we help people to be better fathers or mothers because they can actually enjoy their life a little bit more because of the things that we do. And I look at it that way, and I try to present that to our team. And you're right, it does give a huge sense of purpose. I'm the one that talks to the business owner and I say, what are your problems? And that's the things I hear. And then I say, here's the solutions that we can provide. And I'm not so sure that that I connect that with the team enough. And I think that's wonderful. I think that's a great insight for sure, Richard.
It's important. I was guilty of that. Our clients used to say thank you to me and I never passed it on. And then I did once and I saw the reaction of the team. I thought, do you know what? This is really nice for me as well, seeing their reaction.
Yes.
And it's lovely. Like the other day, one of our clients wrote to me and said, I just want to say thank you. Working with your team is the highlight of my day. They're really kind. And I love working with them. So I forwarded on that email. They said it was brilliant. They loved it.
Yeah. So there seems to be, and I say seems to be, a conflict between what an employee wants and what a business owner wants. Okay. A business owner, I want expenses as low as I can get them without sacrificing quality to the client. And I want the client to get whatever we can provide in great customer service. Well, employees aren't necessarily all about low wages or battling against. There's a conflict there. There's a little bit. I want to get as much as I can for what I'm worth, and maybe even a little bit more, versus I want to pay exactly what they're worth. If I could get away with $1 less, maybe, and I don't think but I think most business owners do want to give a fair wage. There's a big difference in the word fair in that sentence. And not just that, but things today, especially in our arena where it's not an office job, we need people to go out at certain times of the day to do these things. So there's not a lot of flexibility there, but we have business owners that have figured out ways to, okay, well, there is part-time opportunity there. So maybe we can get them home a little bit earlier. What are some things that we can do, because it's so important, that flexibility nowadays, especially with things like we're doing. We're working right now, you and I, and we're sitting here having a chat. That's all we're really doing, because Zoom and video conferencing and video meetings just exploded because of COVID, probably 5 or 6 years before it would have without COVID. And so how do you do these things when you don't have there's a need to be somewhere? Okay.
So this was interesting. I was working with a charity recently, and the CEO of the charity came to me and he said, my team aren't happy. I've got a big turnover. What can I do? And this is a really impressive charity, right? They send people to the front line of war zones, of disasters.
Okay.
Yeah. So people in their team have to be available 24/7. If they can't control when there's a flood in Morocco, and when it happens, they need to be able to call the financial director to approve the budget and get the 3 people over there as soon as possible. But what it meant was their senior team couldn't turn off. They couldn't turn their phone off if they went out for a meal with their wife. They couldn't play. One of them couldn't play hockey. If he played hockey, he had to have his phone in his pocket or his watch connected, and they had to answer it while he was playing with his mates. And so when we asked the staff, they found, they felt they had no control of their lives. They had no control, no sense of autonomy. And we worked with them, and we found out, we explained the needs of the company. This is what the company needs. What do we need? And then we worked out sort of some shifts, and we worked out for people to cover, and we worked out. And I think firstly, people were appreciated that they were listened to, that we listened to their problems, and then we tried to find a solution. And then we did the best we could given the situation. Right. We cannot control when a flood will happen. So they do understand that, but we can control, we can give them some time off, and we can give them some flexibility. But there was a study recently on shift workers. I think it was maybe it was in Starbucks. I can't remember. And they were really unhappy because their shifts changed every day. So they didn't know when they needed childcare. They didn't know if they could pick up their kid, and that was causing them a lot of stress. Yeah. So
I love that. The fact that they were so appreciative just to have the conversation and to realize that, hey, you know what, we're listening. And I admit that is a difficult thing, and I get it. I understand it. What can we do? I always like to, here's the truth of what the reality as I see it, what we're facing.
Yeah.
If you own the company, Mr. or Mrs. Employee, what would your solutions be? Let's work on solutions together. And it may be, that I think that kind of opens up their eyes a little bit too, to the realization of, okay, you do have a point, and this is a difficult thing to try to work out. And if we can get on that same field, I think then, we can progress. It's when I often used to say, if you need to vent, just please let me know you're just venting, because I'll listen, I'll keep my trap shut, I'll go like this a lot, and I'll let you vent. If you need me to solve a problem, I need to talk truth and facts. We need to do as close to truth and facts as possible. There's a different conversation there.
Exactly. That's really impressive that you differentiate between the two. Lots of managers don't. That's really good.
I don't know where I came up with that. I think somebody else probably did, and I copied it. That's usually what happens.
Nothing wrong with that.
make things better, right?
Yeah.
So, and you know that in software. Yeah. Let's see here. So we've got conflict in offices, especially as you're growing and scaling. Yeah. You've got people that their lives change. One of the most frustrating things as a manager of people can be that great employee for 5 years, and then they started dating somebody, and all of a sudden they turn into a different human being. Yeah. So all these dynamics happen, obviously, in life. What does your happiness platform say about things that change? I mean, I would think, obviously, what made me happy at 22 does not make me happy at 56 or as happy, or maybe that baseline changes. I suppose maybe the baseline doesn't change once you find it. Yeah. But the things that can move it change, I would assume, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And there was a study that came out, I think it was 2 months ago, right? And finding what were the biggest drivers of happiness. And for the younger people, Gen Z, it's more purpose and learning, right? That's what they want in their career. They want to learn a lot. They want to get a lot, move up the career ladder quicker, and they need to know what they're doing matters, right? Matters somewhere to someone. However, I don't know how old you are. You are, Shawn, late 20s, I imagine, something like that.
56 or so.
So for people our age, right, who have families, autonomy and flexible it becomes much more important than learning. And so it does change. Your needs change, and everybody's different. That's one of the things that we've noticed, that I've learned over the years, is that you can't just apply some policy for the whole company. It'll work for some people, it'll have zero effect on the others. So even though you've got to do some global things, you've got to look at each person's individual needs as well. Each team's
that's a great point, because there is a fine line to walk between you've got different needs that'll make you happy, Jane, compared to Lisa over here. But I also have to have certain things based on government laws of the land that say I've got to treat people equally. So if Lisa does something and gets away with it, and you fire somebody else over it, that's a problem. So there is that fine line of what we have to address. What do you say to somebody that is having problems with that concept?
Oh, it's really difficult. It's really difficult. I remember when I used to be a teacher many years ago, and we always, all the rules kept on changing in the school because there was one teacher that wouldn't do his planning or do his this, and it used to really annoy us because everyone else was doing it, and suddenly we had to do all this paperwork. I think the general rule is that that person has to go because he's causing more unhappiness and more problems than he's solving, but or she. But no,
I like that. That's great. I love you just kind of opened my brain to who's creating the most happiness at the workplace. And then, who takes away from that happiness. And so one of the things I know for sure is, we talk hire, lead, and chill here. So hire the best you can. Leadership is everything. Lead them to your vision or your why. And then the culture part of it, or what we call chill. The culture is, everybody knows how important culture is, but a lot of small businesses can't identify their culture necessarily. And one of the things I know for sure is once you let one person take that culture and destroy the culture, the longer you wait, like 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, that's long. In my book, the harder it is to get back together, and then you got pieces falling on the ground. That's how important I think culture. And when you say happiness, I think of culture, right? That's basically what we're talking about. How do you deal with an organization that wants to put a culture together? They love what you're talking about with happiness, like I do. But that's not where they're at right now with things, and that's not how it's been for 10 years. But they need a change. What is sort of the general process of that shift into the new happiness culture?
Okay, so I like to think of it this way: if you wanted to make more sales in the company, what you'd probably do is you'd make someone in charge of it. You'd probably set some KPIs.
Love it.
Probably set some KPIs. We want to make this amount by this date, and then you create a strategy around how you're going to make more sales. It's just the same with happiness. You put someone in charge of it. Doesn't have to be a full time. Can be someone just doing it part time. Measure it, and then to create a strategy to fix things. Right? It's not much effort, to be honest, and little things can make a big difference. You can make little changes and they will really push the needle. And if you keep doing that and you'll show people that you really do care about them, you'll see a difference pretty quickly. And it's not just their happiness that you'll see will improve. You'll see this. There was a massive study, the biggest study on well-being that came out last year, and they found increases in productivity, reduction in staff turnover, increase improvement in attractiveness of working in that company, improving creativity, which I thought was collaboration improved. But the most impressive thing, the most interesting thing that came out of this study, and it was done with Oxford University and Indeed, it was like tens of thousands of companies, millions and millions of users, was that the happier companies performed better, their stocks performed better, or their shares performed better than your average company. So it actually affects the bottom line of the company. So it's worth measuring it. You don't have to go full in and get a chief happiness officer quite yet, but just look at it, start measuring it, start asking people how they're feeling each week. Just a little red, orange, green scale. Start talking to people, make some changes. You'll see a difference pretty quickly.
Do you have any ideas, recommendations, or maybe even a service you provide or have that would help screen for that up front in the recruiting spectrum, so that we can better, there's so many different predictive indexes out there and personality assessments. And I tell people, if the government announced tonight that there's a new law and you can only ask one question on a job application, in my world, mine would be rate your luck in life from 0 to 10.
Okay. Yeah.
and we've found that based on our data, that the magic number is under 6. Those that answer under a 6, okay, with 2 exceptions to the rule, run for the hills. That's the doubted promises. But we've also learned that they take zero ownership and accountability when things go wrong. They're never late to work. It's their alarm clock's fault. It's the customer's fault, the equipment's fault. It only rains on me. Hey, I won $50 million in the lottery. I can't believe what I got to pay in taxes on this. It's driving me. The 2 exceptions we found is normally a 5 or a 0. Yeah, literally, and it's something. And it's the only question on our application that we asked for. Tell us why you answered the way you did. And it's a 5 or a 0, and it's something like, I don't believe in luck, I believe in working hard, telling the truth, and so on and so on. We like that answer. Love that answer. Okay. The other one is what I would call a one-off, or blah blah, but. So normally I'm blessed in life and I got great friends and this and that, but Mom, I just found out mom's got cancer, or my daughter just was in a horrible accident. But when we look at that, we at one point, those that answered under a 6 and put the 2 exceptions on a shelf, lasted on average about 4 months or less with our company.
Wow.
That's how potent that question was in the home service arena. So that would be the question I'd ask.
Actually, that's a really good question. Really good question. And there's studies that show that people who are more optimistic, or people who I think they are lucky, are luckier or do better in life, right? Than those who are more pessimistic, who regard themselves as more pessimistic or regard themselves as a victim. So I think that's as good a question. I can't think of any off the top of my head. No one's ever asked me this question, and I think that's a really good question, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah. That'll be a good screener. Yeah.
So, about I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, the big buzzword was paradigm shift. Okay, I don't hear that very much anymore, but it used to be the biggest. So today it's, I think, mindset. You got to have your mindset, right? So that's where I get perception. I mean, perception is sort of mindset. How do you change people's perception? One of the, and I'll preface it by saying, one of the things that I try to talk to business owners about, that I talk with daily, is perception and ego, and putting your ego on the shelf. And if we can do a better job as leaders, understanding what our employees are looking at, what they're tasting, what they're smelling, what they're hearing. My wife says, as I'm watching the football game on TV or golf, and she's got a can of paint in her hand, and she says, "Hey, hon, I'm going up to finish painting the room." I didn't hear her say that. I heard her say, "You lazy son of a bitch, what are you sitting on the couch for?" That's exactly what I hear. Okay. So I have to change my perception on that. That's just, my brain works that way, because sometimes I'm going, "Oh man, I know I should be helping her. I know here I am." She doesn't mean that at all, though. So if if that's somebody that, how do we change that? How do we lead people through that? Because it's about leadership. You got any like hacks or any? I don't like to use that because I know it's a lot harder than that. But
yeah, to convince people that it's the right thing to do. So, look, when we started this in our company, it was always my intention of building a company with happy employees, but we didn't really know how to do it to begin with. And as we did, we then embedded it more in our culture, and we started talking about it more and being more overt, more intentional with our actions, right? And there were, I don't know, 30% of the company that just said, yeah, you're only saying this to get more clients. You're only saying this because you want to attract more people. And we were going, no, this is what we do. And the only way we convinced them was just by our actions. This is what we're doing. And when we sacked our first client because they didn't make our team happy, they went, oh, wow, okay. So you're willing to sacrifice revenue and profit for us. Okay, that's interesting. And some of them it took like 2 years to convince. Most of them moved over pretty quickly, but some of them it did take a long time. But it's just with your actions and just showing and listening as well. Really listening to people.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So no hacks, no 5-minute hacks, I'm afraid today.
No, I didn't think so. So what happens when? So you've got the happiness thing going, and it's working. That doesn't mean we have a conflict-free workspace, right? No. So how do we handle those things? How do you bring happiness back? And when I can see where it's like, you know where you can stick your happiness, And that gets to somebody at some point that those things happen because we're human. Yeah. How do you work through that one?
So it took a while, to be honest, but we've just embedded it in our culture. And honestly, this does not happen overnight. In our company, we embedded it in our culture that you're working as a team and we celebrate team successes rather than individual. We tried to break away from people looking after their themselves rather than looking after the team. So little things like we celebrate team successes, like we high fives around, thanking people. And if something goes wrong, we don't blame anyone. That's really important. As soon as you start blaming people, game over. Because they will just be looking after themselves from that point on, and quite rightly, because they don't want to lose their job. So, and one of the things we do in IT, there's something called the retrospective prime directive, right? And it's just a saying that you read before meetings. A retrospective is a meeting you do at the end of a project or halfway through a project to see how it's going. And the prime directive says, I'm going to get the words wrong. Whatever we find in this meeting, we understand that everyone tried their best given the knowledge they had, the time they had, and the whatever opportunities they had. Yeah. So you understand that everyone had tried their best and they weren't deliberately trying to make a mistake. And that really helped as well. There's a quick hack.
That is a good hack. I like that. But you make a lot of great points, Richard, with just little things that can go a long way too. Yeah. Those are just things that are, you're not climbing buildings and things like that. You're just doing kind things and being empathetic and understanding and all those good things. We're all in this together. We're all on this planet together, one way, shape, or form. What do you say about culture with, is it something that everybody should be able to recite what the culture is? Do you have it? Is it up on the wall where, and that's the answer to that one. And I've got one more I want to add sort of related to that.
Yeah. So look, if I asked all our staff, what are our 3 values or what are we have 3 beliefs, I'm pretty sure none of them would be able to recite them, but they would be able to say, yeah, it's about making us happy. And if we're happy, then we're going to do better work, which is more or less what they are. Obviously we paid someone a lot of money to write them much nicer than that. And they're stuck on an about us page somewhere. But it's really, really important that your staff understand what your core beliefs are, what your core values are, even if they can't recite them word for word. Yeah. And ours definitely can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I love you mentioned the word actions. We get a lot of that talk again about mindset. And mindset is worth the spoon that's on the floor right now if there's no action tied to it. I could be really hyped up about something, and that's what a lot of conferences do and all that sort of thing. But, even, going to counseling or something like that to either, I had a conversation with the other owners today about, going to counseling or a psychologist. Nothing's wrong in general. It's just that's a healthy thing and something that's, you talk things through, you talk about. You might not be able to talk to your significant other if they don't have an entrepreneur mindset. My wife is very she loves risk mitigation. That's not really aligned with entrepreneurship at all. So there's a good balance there. So there's tough conversations to be had, or we can't identify with some things on a business level. But at the same time, I go to get some counseling or talk to somebody or a coach, whatever it is, and none of it matters without that action. What is it? What is it that you think we can do to get people to take those actions? I mean, to me, when somebody asks, what's the secret to success, or why is there, some people are successful? And my easiest answer, and it's not one I came up with, I don't know who came up with it, but it's been said 100 times, is successful people do the things that unsuccessful people don't want to do, even when they don't want to do it. They still do it. And that's the easiest way to explain the difference. But how do you get that person that doesn't want to do it? You got to make 100 calls a day or you're not going to be successful. I don't want to make 100 calls. What is it that, that's the magic question, isn't it, of everything when we talk business?
So, the way I see it is, as I said before, put someone in charge, create a strategy, right? And just decide one thing you're going to do, but you're going to do it properly. That week, that month, that fortnight, or whatever. And it might be something like, let's set up a one-to-one with all our team. So our managers will meet with the rest of the team and see how they are. That might be your first thing that you do, half an hour. And then you just do that every week, every 2 weeks for the next 3 months. Okay. And you embed it in your culture. And then you might look at your meetings and you go, people leave our meetings, they're always shouting at each other. What can we do? What can we do in our meetings? Right. It might be something really simple, like when they arrive in the meeting room, there's a plate of biscuits on the table or something like that. Just look at where the biggest problems are and just do something about it and make sure you keep doing it. Now, if it doesn't work, you've learned from it and you're going to try something else, but you've definitely got to keep trying. It won't fix itself. It won't, but be intentional as well. Think what's going to move the needle the most, what's the most important thing, and just do one thing. Don't do 50 things in the first week, because then you'll never know which one worked and which one didn't. Just do one at a time, and slowly over time you'll see a difference. It's called I don't know if it's quite popular in Britain, the theory of marginal gains. Have you come across this?
It's kind of like tiny habits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, the 1% rule. Yeah, lots of little changes together will make a big difference.
Yeah. Start with making your bed. If you're one that crawls out of bed, doesn't make your, or just pause, stop, be thankful, make your bed. If you make your bed, your day will go much better. You've accomplished something small, and so I'm a big believer in that. And then, great things can't be done with a magic wand overnight. I mean, these, and you're talking about significant changes that can, you said it. I mean, there's studies, and you've mentioned the word study several times. Studies show certain things. Happiness at the most happy companies are the most successful ones.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or most likely to be more successful. So, I mean, that goes a mile. And I'm sure that, it's not going to get any different. And I think, actually, I always ask a guest a little bit about AI. Is there anything with AI that you toss or dash into the batter of any of this? Because you're not really talking about too much AI bringing happiness to anybody.
Well, I don't know. It makes me happy when I can use it to tell me what film to watch
Yeah.
tonight. I love the new ChatGPT talk to it thing.
Yeah. Love it.
But that one I can't answer. I don't
I think
really know. Yeah.
I think there's going to be a premium on happiness and a premium on human interaction because of
Yeah.
AI. I use
Yeah.
AI almost daily, certainly
Mhm.
weekly, and I'm
Yeah.
all for AI type
Yeah.
of stuff. But I think that eventually that's going to put a premium on human relationships and
Yeah.
even at being better at creating happiness and or like you say, much better than I did is an environment for it and
Yeah.
creating
Yeah.
a bed where they can sleep in a bed of happiness.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
but I think anybody that just has the conversation and brings it up and talks about it, you're going to get some good ideas from your employees. You're going to get some good ideas from your customers. It's
Mhm.
not something where you need to sit down, but you keep going back to one or two or three things. You've mentioned here are the facts from what all these studies indicate. I mean, these are things. You can dispute anything you want, I guess, but here's the facts.
Yeah.
And then you've mentioned a couple times, sort of like the tiny steps to get to it. And then the other thing you've mentioned is that put somebody in charge, the accountability, somebody be accountable for it so that it doesn't get off the radar. And I think those three things in general is what I kind of got out of all the, happiness, wisdom that we talked about. And I think all of that's good stuff. And I think it's a lot more fun than, here's our core behaviors. You got to work like a plow horse. You got to, and all these other things, when talking about a happiness culture is a hell of a lot more fun than a lot of the things I hear from business owners out there about. I'm going to look at ours immediately when I get back from San Diego next week and start talking about this conversation. This guy named Richard Clarke says this, and And I do. I think it's that important. Like I said, I'm a big guy with perception, and I think happiness is really. And now you might. I get people that push back on this, but I believe this, and I certainly get a lot of pushback on this, and that's fine. I'm to the point where I believe that happiness is a moral obligation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You do agree with that?
I do agree with that. However, it's very difficult to sell that to businesses because they want to do the profit. So I go in with, it will make you more money, full stop, right?
Yes.
And it's the right thing to do. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes.
But,
excellent. Okay. Is there anything else before we wrap it up? I've got happyteams.substack.com.
Yeah. So each week I write a short blog. It's aimed to be read in under 2 minutes. And it gives you one little thing that you can do in your company each week, and it explains the science behind it and why it works.
Awesome.
So,
great. And somebody should be able to find your contact information on there too, as well, Richard.
Probably. If my website is richardclarke.eu. Yeah.
Richard Clarke with an e.eu.
And that's everything. I run workshops, and online workshops, and I can teach companies how to make their teams happier.
I think that's awesome. If you don't mind, I'm going to want to touch base in a couple of weeks with you, I think, and talk to you a little bit more about some stuff. And we might be able to help each other out with a few things, because boy, is happiness needed in this world, man, and in the workplace.
Right now it is, definitely. Yeah. So good.
All right, Richard. I appreciate it. We're going to wrap it up here next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Unless my daughter they win one more game, then I think I'm going to have to boost it to 3 p.m. so I can watch the ball game. But we'll be back on Tuesday, and I'll be at ClipperCon in San Diego tomorrow, and I'll be speaking on Friday sometime in the morning, I think, and we're going to have a lot of fun there. So I appreciate it, everybody, and as always, make a good day. And if there's anything I can do to help you, I will do my best. Take good care, and we'll see you next Tuesday.